yourselves. Good. Good morning, everyone. We are in Perek Bet of Sefer Daniel. And in Perek Bet of Sefer Daniel, what happened up until now, we went over the first 13 psukim in the Perek. So we're going to be starting with Pasuk Yud Daled. But what happened was that Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. And Nebuchadnezzar was terribly bothered by this dream. He called together all of his wise men, and he told them two pieces. He said, one, he wants them to tell him the dream he had, which was part of his test to see if they were real. And the second part of it was he then wanted them to explain it. They weren't able to do that explanation. And as a result, and they made all their excuses around. And as it says in Pasuk Yud Gimel, Vidata Nefkat, just like in Megillat Esther, Vahadat Nitna, the rule had went out, V'chakimaya mitkatlin, and the wise men were going to be killed, Uvau Daniel v'chavroi lihitkatala. And also Daniel v'chavroi and his chaverim, his three friends who were part of this peace from the Jews, were going to be killed as well. So the decree had come. The king was furious that no one was going to take his dream, in his perspective, either fulfill, be able to explain it or take it seriously, the situation. And therefore he put forth this command. But at that moment, as Daniel Hativ Eta Utaim, Daniel came up with an idea. Now, Eta v'ta'em, ta'em is a ta'am, an idea, a reason. Eta is etza, the tet and the tza, they many times exchange in Aramaic, between Aramaic and Hebrew. And he went la Aryoch Rav Tabachaya di Malka, who was the chief tabach of the king. Now, when we're back in Sefer Breshit, Rav Tabachim, we talk about like the chief waiter, the chief cook, but a tabach is also the chief executioner. Okay, to kill is also tabach. And so he had this idea, and he went to the person who was going to be responsible, Aryoch. We know the name Aryoch back from Sefer Breshit. It's a different person. Aryoch was one of the kings who was involved in the battle of the 4 versus 5 kings back in Parshat Lech Lecha. Aryoch was there, and here the same name appears as well in Bavel, different person, but he goes to him, Dinafak lekatala lechakimei Bavel. And Aryoch was the person who had gone out to kill, he was going to execute all of those wise men of Bavel. Now, the question is, why is it that Daniel has this etzah v'tam? It sounds like he has this great idea. Okay, what is part of his great idea? And the simple explanation is Rashi. Rashi in Sefer Daniel, in the Aramaic portions, much of what Rashi does is translate. But Rashi says, listen, he had an idea, and he's bringing this idea to Aryoch, and we'll see what the idea is in a minute. But the Dat Mikra says, it's the Etzah V'tam that really Daniel is thinking. He's got a certain amount of seichel and chokhmah. He's going to be going to Aryoch. He's got an idea. He's got something behind it. He's dealing with it wisely. The Malbim, however, takes a very different approach. The Malbim says that he understands there's a problem right now, Daniel. And the reason is Daniel is one of the people who is in the court of the king, meaning that when the king had called together the wise men to consult on this dream, Daniel is in this mixture, whether he was there, in the first row or he was in the 5th row back, he's part of that whole picture. And in fact, if you remember in the previous pasuk, which we just read, it said that the king had sent out the command to kill all of his wise men, and also that would include Daniel and his friends as well. So Daniel is part of this. And Daniel has to now figure out a way, according to the Malbim, that he can come up and overturn the decree of the king, and without the king coming to him saying, where were you till now? Right. Right. So Daniel has to figure out something now. And so he's coming up with an approach that is a very wise approach, taking into account the circumstances that he's in. Daniel wasn't on the front row. Okay, remember we have this whole issue of how many years in. Daniel has not risen to the level of the chief advisors. He's probably one of many, and in the back rows. But now he realizes the danger is coming upon him. And this is the Malbim's approach. He has to come up with a very wise approach of how to be able to make sure that the king doesn't come to him and say, hey, where you been till now? So this is the ta'aim.
The king said that.
Because the king has already been disappointed. The king has already issued his order of execution. So the king goes in and he gave 2 chances, if you remember, to the other wise men.
If he was there, why didn't he step up and say, I can?
So according to the way the Malbim would take it, he wasn't really in that position to be one of those people. If you think about it, imagine the American government today. The president assembles his cabinet, or he goes to the Secretary of Defense, right? And he meets with the 5 top people in the Defense Department. And there's some guy who's like 5 levels down, somewhere his office is 500 yards away from there. Okay, and the Defense Department make their decision. There's a consequence to that decision, and the guy goes ahead and he's watching what's happening from behind, and he thinks they're a bunch of crazy people. But what can he do? And then all of a sudden he finds out they're all going to be fired, himself included. That's really where Daniel was probably in this piece. He wasn't one of the people to step forward, but he may not have even imagined that this would be the consequence that the king was going to have, kill everybody. So now he steps up. He didn't step up. By the way, there's another issue as well. Remember, we aren't really sure where this is in terms of Daniel's own role. We do know at the end of this, Daniel is going to be elevated to be one of the great leaders in the court. We know now he is not one of the great leaders in the court. So we're not really even sure. If you remember the way this Chalom began, it was the second year. One of the great questions is, how could it be the second year if Daniel has 3 years to get going and it's the second year from this and the second year from that, or maybe it's talking about something entirely different. We're not sure, but we know that Daniel wasn't a player yet. And in fact, you'll see how he's going to be introduced in a moment. He was somewhat unknown to the king. So what happens? Anei ve'amar la'aryoch shalita di malka. And he said to Arioch, the ruler of the king, not in a pejorative sense, one of the ministers of the king. Now, the Shalita de Malcha, interesting, if you notice, Arioch in the previous pasuk is referred to as Rab Tabachaya, as the chief executioner. In this pasuk, he's called Shalita de Malcha. Now, why is that the situation? Again, the Malbim jumps in and the Malbim says, because Daniel is not approaching him as the executioner. Daniel is approaching him with a different role in mind. Okay, and again, this goes back to this whole idea of the chokhmah he has and how he's approaching. Because if Daniel goes ahead and he approaches the Sarah Tabachim, the Rava Tabachim, the executioner, says, I got this idea, oh executioner, the guy's going to say, too late, you're done. But if he goes to him and says, hey, oh minister, you are the smart guy who's always giving advice to the king, not just the one who's executing everybody. There's a different kind of chance. And the Malbim says that's why we shift his title. He wants to know, why is this ruling being done so quickly? Now, if you notice, if you see the mehach, like we have the word chutzpah, the same word, right? And why is he jumping at all of this from before the king? Adain milta hodar Arioch leDaniel. That's when Arioch explains all the background to Daniel. In other words, going back to your question, Alita, Daniel, in this point, he really wasn't fully party to all of the conversation, at least the way he's presenting it to Arioch. He says, what's going on? Why are we rushing into this so quickly? And at that point, Arioch tells him everything. Now, what the Mitzudot David say, what does he tell him? He tells him the inner circle of wise men, they told the king that his request was an impossible request, that there was no one on this earth who could possibly resolve or answer what the dream was, explain the dream, which was to Nebuchadnezzar the ultimate insult. However, according to the Ibn Ezra says, then Arioch filled in Daniel. Arioch, according to the Ibn Ezra, is going a step further. He's saying, now let me explain to you how we can possibly push things off. What is the rush? Arioch says, I don't really know what the rush is, okay, but maybe here we can do it. Rashi takes a different piece on it. Rashi just says, why is that Arioch explains why the king is so angry. Daniel al uva min malka. So Daniel goes into the king without any permission. And dizman yintinle, to ask for time that should be given to him. Okay, I want some time. Ufishra la chavaya lamalka. And then, if you give me time, O king, I will be able to explain your dream. Now, think back to Megillat Esther, because when you think to Megillat Esther, you have a similar kind of monarchy. True, it's Persian versus Babylonian in the next empire. But if you remember, Esther is supposed to go into Achashverosh. What's the issue? What does she say at that time? Yes, you have to be called in. If you go in without being called, you take your life into your hands, right? So she asks all the Jews to fast for her for 3 days and to pray for her. Here, Daniel just jumps right into the king. Oh, so it's interesting how he was able to enter in so quickly. We're really not sure. And it's one of those questions on this episode, which we don't have a clear answer on. And what makes it even more complicated is later in this story, he's going to ask someone to go in with him to be the intermediary. Here it sounds like he just is able to just jump in right away, and he has that kind of access. Okay, but as Alida says, and the Dat Mikra says here, well, listen, he's already sentenced to death. So what's the worst thing that's going to happen to him? He gets killed sooner. So he's got very little to lose at this point of jumping in. Interestingly, Josephus, when he tells this story, Josephus adds in that Daniel asked permission from Arioch. Arioch, can you get me an invitation to go into the king? And then he goes into the king and he tells the king, I want to give you the answer. Now, interestingly, what does the king wanted all along? He wanted two things. The king wanted someone to tell him his dream, and the king wanted someone to tell him the meaning of the dream. What does Daniel offer the king?
Really just the interpretation.
Just the interpretation, okay? Just the interpretation.
Which is exactly what the king didn't want.
Right, okay? That he went ahead, and what so Daniel is saying, look, I know you feel like you're not going to get everything you want, according to the Malbim. I know you're very angry about it. Give me a little bit of time. I'll give you the interpretation. Interestingly, when he does report, he gives him the dream and the interpretation itself. But right now he says, he's basically going to the king and says, listen, give me a day, or give me overnight, really. Give me overnight. I'll get you a pretty good answer. I won't get you everything you want. This is the Malbim. I'll get you something. Give me a little bit of time. And that's what he answers. So he's going into the king. His life is at stake. He doesn't know. The king responds, yeah.
Why didn't he just tell him, I'll give you everything you?
Good. And the answer to it is, that's the problem with the pasuk here. In other words, we don't have a good answer of why he says. So the simple explanation of this, Barry, is, and again, look at the pasuk. What are the issues we have with the pasuk? One is, how does he get into the king without an invitation? Right? We know the ancient world, you don't do those kind of things. Why does he only say, I'm going to give you an interpretation? So it could be very simply that this report has certain things assumed within it. One is that he did get an invitation. That's Josephus. Or the Dad Mikra says he didn't need one because he was going to get killed anyways. Or when he said, I'm going to give you the explanation, it's subsumed as well the idea of the dream itself.
Right. If
Okay.
the king didn't give him the dream, then it's obvious he's going to give him the dream and the interpretation.
Right.
As long as the king before didn't want to give the dream and have him interpret it. So if the king is
It
not
could be,
giving
right.
the dream,
Yeah,
then
so it could be.
give the dream in order to-
100%. At Edain, okay, then Daniel Levete Azal. Daniel went to his home. V'lechananya, Mishael, v'Azariah. And he went to his three compatriots, Hanania, Mishael, and Azariah, Chavroi, okay, his friends, Milta Hoda. And he told them what was going on. Milta in Aramaic, just so you should know, the word milah in Aramaic. Milta is from the word milah. Milah in Hebrew is a word. However, what's interesting is in Aramaic, milta is davar, of the thing. What's funny is in Aramaic, the word davar is a word. So the two words kind of get flipped. Their meanings get flipped between Hebrew and Aramaic. So he went, Azali went, Hananya, Mishael, Azariah, Chavroi, Milta Hoda, and he told them what was going on. Now, he went back to his home. Where does that mean he was? He was obviously, he'd been by the king. Typically, during this incident, it seems to be that he must have been in the king's court or in the king's area of the palace, because for him to go home and first to inform Hananya, Mishael, and Azariah means that they were detached from one another during the story. Okay, and why does he tell them all of these things? And the reason is because he's going to want them, as we'll see in the next pasuk, to daven. He wants them to daven for him because we have a principle in halacha, and this the Malbi mentions, but it's from the Gemara, that the tefillah of a community is much more powerful than the tefillah of an individual. And again, going back to the parallels to Megillat Esther, Esther, when she was going to go into the king, when Mordechai tells her to go into the king, she doesn't tell Mordechai, daven for me. She says, I want everybody to daven for me. Okay.
He's only got 4 people.
Well, because by the way, who else does he have available to him? He may not have the Jewish people available to him, unlike Mordechai and Esther, where Mordechai had that role. Here, these 4 people were already part of the king's broader palace compound. V'rachamin lemiv'e min kadam elakash shmaya. I want you to pray before the God of heavens, al raza danan, regarding this mystery. Raz in Hebrew is also the same thing. Raz, I need the answer to the mystery of the dream.
What's Raz?
Raz is a mystery. Di lo Yehovdun Daniel v'Chavroa im shar chakimei Bavel, to make sure that we don't get killed with everyone else. Now, the word Raz is actually Persian in source, but we use it in Hebrew as well. And he says, I need you have to pray with me. We have to pray together. Adayin, then, okay, Adayin in Aramaic is Az. Then, Bechazva Dilelia Razagale. I'm sorry, the Daniel, Bechazva Dilelia Razagale. Then, to Daniel, the Chazva, the Chazon, is the vision of night, was seen, of the mystery was seen. Adayin, Daniel, Barich Lelakashmaya. And then when he saw it, he was given this vision, he prayed, he thanked, or he blessed God, the God of the heavens. Okay. Now, why Daniel? Think about it. There are 4 of them davening. Daniel gets the vision. The other 3, what's going on with them? So interestingly, when you look at the end of the story, and this is from the Medrash Daniel, the end of the story, Hananya, Mishael, and Azariah are also elevated in rank. And it doesn't seem like they're just the Noch schleppers who get along and are brought along with it, but it seems they have some kind of role. And so the Medrash Daniel says that actually what happens here is Daniel sees it in a chazon laila. He sees it in this vision of night. And with that vision of night was a clearer understanding of things. Whereas the other 3 saw it at a lesser level without the detail of Daniel. Daniel was at a higher level. The other 3 were in on it as well, but not to the same. I mentioned, by the way, just as a side note, the Medrash Daniel. The Medrash Daniel, as I've mentioned before, was something that was just published in 1960, it was 1965, 1968, I'm forgetting now the year. I finally got a copy of it when we were preparing. I ordered it from a used bookstore. I order often from Israel. The interesting thing is apparently it originally came from the library of Professor Yaakov Katz. Jacob Katz was a very famous professor of Jewish history in the Hebrew University, came from his library. And it is a small book. This little book is on both the Medrash Daniel and the Medrash Ezra. It was written well in a time by Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Nissim Misnut. Okay, this is talking about a period of of the early Jewish history of more than 1,000 years ago, even though it wasn't published until recent times. So this is the book of, if I refer to Medrash Daniel, this is the book that I'm referring to. So the Medrash Daniel says that he gets it in the vision of night, and he now goes to bless God. And this blessing of God is going to take us several psukim. And he says as follows, Ane, Daniel answers, he says, Daniel v'amar. And he says, Lahave shmei de elaka mivarach min alma v'ad alma. God's name should be blessed from this world to the next. De chochmata v'urata dilehi, because wisdom and power and strength belong to God. God can ultimately control what's happening to this kingdom. V'hu, and he, God, mahashnei idanaya v'zimnaya, is the one who is able to change the seasons and the times. Mitzudat David says this is actually just poetic. It doesn't mean seasons and times are just milim nigafot. They're synonyms for each other. It's just a way of expressing things. Mahadei malchin, God is able to change kings, umehakem malchin, and cause kings to rise up. Yahev chochmata lechakimin, he gives wisdom to the wise, umandaya liad evina, and knowledge to those who understand. Now, what's happening here, interestingly, raising kings and bringing down kings, according to Rashi, this is already foreshadowing what the dream is all about, what Nebuchadnezzar's dream is all about. Nebuchadnezzar is going to be talking, the dream is going to be talking about the fall of kingdoms. And ultimately, according to to Chazal, is going to be talking about the rise of the Melech HaMashiach, of the Messiah. So he's already talking about what God is the one who controls the world. God is the one who controls what happens with monarchies. God is the one who controls the wisdom. Wisdom in this case is coming to what he is doing. Who Gale amikata umesat rata. God is the one who reveals. Gale is to reveal, like ligalot. Amikata, those things that are deep, and also misatrata. Misatrata actually is the word mystery. It's the same word in English as in Aramaic, mysterion. Okay, mysteries. God is the one who reveals the things that are deep and are mysterious. Yadam abchashocha, God knows what is in the darkness. Unehora imei shira, and the light resides with God. Lachelaka, you are the God avahati, you are the God of my forefathers, of my fathers. Mehodei umishabach ana, I thank you and I praise you. Dichachmatau vurata yahavat li, that you have given me the wisdom and the strength. Ucha'an hodatani dive'ena minach, and now you have given to me what I have requested from you. Dimilat malka hodatena, you have given me the thing that the king wanted. If you notice for just a moment, and this is an unusual piece, if you look, there is the same word hodatani, from the word yada. You have hodatani, and you hodatana, and hodatana. The difference between those two words is one is in singular, and one is in plural. The singular, and ucha'an hodatani diba'ena minach, you have informed me of what I have asked from you. Dimilat malka hodatena, you have told us what the king was of interest, or what he wanted to know. Who is the us? Again, that could be the reference to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Interestingly, Rashi rejects that. And Rashi, interestingly, writes Lashon Yachid, that it's actually a singular form. According to Aramaic Dikduk, it isn't. Aramaic Dikduk says that's a plural form. Okay. The reason is it should have been for pure plural in Aramaic. It probably should have been hodatenya with a yud in there as well. Okay. The aleph at the end is not 100% clear. The Ibn Ezra says it is plural. And what's happening here is telling the other three compatriots as well. But he doesn't, obviously, he makes a distinction. Daniel says, you told me and you told us. You told me the greater specificity. You told us the more general comment as well. Rashi rejects that, and Rashi says that Daniel is just talking about himself. There's room for it within the grammar, but there's also room to go the other route. Pasuk Chav Daled. Kol kavel dena Daniel al Aryoch. And all of this, Daniel came to with Aryoch. Al in this case is El, like Aleph Lamed. Dimani Malka, and what he wanted to do, who the king had appointed, Lohovada lachakime Bavel, the king had appointed him to be the executioner, Aryoch, Azal, v'chein amar le lachakime Bavel al tove al tahovad, and then he went and he told Aryoch, don't kill those wise men. Ha'eleni kadam malka ufishra malka achava. Take me up to the king and let me tell the king the explanation of his dream. Pesher is the explanation, the meaning of his dream. So Daniel gets the dream at night, this Chazon Le'Eliyav, remember? He praises God. Now he goes to Aryoch and he says to Aryoch, okay, I got to tell the king what's going on here. He, unfortunately, what he doesn't go, if you notice, he doesn't go straight to the king at this point. Now, why does he go straight to the king? The last time, he jumps right into the king, and according to Shitat Alida, which is also the Dat Mikra, the reason is he's got nothing to lose. He's a dead man anyways, right? So he jumps right into the king. According to Josephus, he had a middleman there, but let's just take what the Ketuvim tell us. He jumped right in, and here he's not jumping right in. So what do we do now? He's not jumping right in. Why isn't he jumping right in? So according to the Malbim, the reason he isn't jumping right in is because he realizes there's another level of danger. The other level of the danger is if he were to go in by himself, he would be afraid that what would happen is that he would be accused by the king for having taken so long. Remember, if he was there, the king could say, now you come? Where have you been all this time? Either the king would continue to murder everyone, or the king might murder Daniel. Here, according to the Malbim, he's set up Aryoch. Remember, he spoke to Aryoch wisely, set up Aryoch to believe that Daniel was a little bit unaware of what was going on, and that's why it's taken so long. So he says, Aryoch, let's go to the king together, and he protects himself. He has a witness with him at the same time. Yeah, Meira. One night. He got the Chazon Laila.
So why would he say why taking so
Because originally the king had asked the other Chachamim. Remember, the king had asked the other Chachamim, the first 13 psukim of the parak. He had asked the other Chachamim had not come through with their explanation. And there was a period of time that took. The king got nice and angry already. You know, if you think about it, here for the king to say, execute all of my wise men was a pretty extreme measure, even though they have the full power to do so. And the king go back to Achashverosh for a minute. If you think about it, the king also doesn't necessarily want to retract any orders. I don't know. Apparently in Bavel they could, whereas in Persia they couldn't. You know, the king, remember, after Haman was killed, the king told Mordechai and Esther, well, I got a little problem here because once the rule is out, I can't retract it. Here, apparently, he's going to be able to retract it, but it is not necessarily the most glorious of moments when a king retracts a command to execute. Yafa, you had a question?
This was just a technical question. Thank you for responding. It really, part of this sefer is written in Hebrew, and part of it is in Aramaic. I would think that its tefillah would have been written in Hebrew. That's all, just really technical.
Which would have been written in Hebrew?
Daniel's tefillah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
So that's, by the way, the fact that Daniel is so heavily written in Aramaic is one of the great mysteries that we have. Because and I mentioned this last week or 2 weeks ago, I mentioned this, the idea that when it comes to the tefillot, when it comes to other Sfarim, when it's in Aramaic, like Ezra and Nehemiah, when you find the Aramaic, it's just preserving documents. And here, all of a sudden, 6 prakim are in Aramaic. And the question is, why is it in Aramaic in general? It was the language of the court. It may have been the lingua franca of the Jews themselves at that time. Just like we have, by the way, we still preserve our Aramaic tefillot. We have the Kaddish is in Aramaic. We have, but if you look at some of these words, you think Zemirot, or you think Kari Bone, you'll see a lot of words there. You look in the Brich Shmei. So it could be, I don't know, but that's your question is one of the questions of the Sefer. Yeah. Jim, you had a question?
Well, maybe one reason is that what Ashveroth said was outside the court, so it was to the public, and therefore it would be harder to bring that back, while opposed to this one, which was internal, and the general public would not know about this.
It may be that there were different rules of monarchs between Babylon and Persia. Also, I don't know. You're right. That could be very, very likely be. It'd be less of an embarrassment, but it wouldn't be too pretty, anyways. Yeah, Lita.
So Daniel went to the king by himself, and he got permission to wait a day. So why would he be afraid that the king is now going to say, "What took you so long?" He already got the permission to interpret the dream. So I'm going,
Yeah. So the reality is, and this goes back to, let's take it one step back. The question we first have is, why did he go in by himself? And now why does he go in with someone else? So we don't know those answers. So we're theorizing different possibilities, right? One possibility is he never went in by himself. That's Josephus. He always went in with somebody else, so I don't have a problem, right? Second possibility is, no, he really did go in by himself. Well, how could he go in by himself? Well, he had nothing to lose. Okay, we got that one taken care of. Now, why did he go in with somebody else?
Yes.
Is still the problem. Well, he could go in with somebody else, but if he was going to get all the glory, he doesn't need anybody else, right? So that's where the Malbim is coming up, is trying to figure out, well, why does he need somebody else with him at this point if he's coming in with the good news? So maybe you want somebody coming in with you when it's not such good news, because the king is already, the king says, I'll give you another day. But at the end of the day, when he comes up, the king's still going to say, 100% right. Couldn't you have done that a day or two earlier? So maybe that's where the Malbim is coming from. Yeah, Jim.
Well, maybe it's more of a political situation where initially he had nothing to lose, but now that he wants, from a political point of view, he wants to protect himself with his boss, and therefore he brought his boss with him.
Which goes in again close to something Malbim says, that one of the other things he's doing politically by going in with his boss, he's also giving credit to his boss.
Right.
His boss gets, I found the guy. Okay. And it may be of use to him later on. So if you look then, he goes, Edayin, at that point, Aryoch bihit be'ala hanel Daniel kadam malka. Aryoch quickly, Bahala is, like a confusion almost, like moved him really fast and brought Daniel up to the king. V'chein amarle. And this is what he said to the king. Di hashkachat gevar, I found this guy, min b'nei galuta di Yehud, who was from the exile of Yehuda, of the Jews, di fishra lemalka Yehuda, who's going to give you the explanation. Now, the problem with this pasuk, I found this guy, but hadn't Daniel been there the day before? We don't know. And there's not a good answer to this. I found this guy, but it is true that it could be that, again, if I'm just giving all the credit to Aryoch gets to make the declaration. This guy, you remember him from yesterday. He's mine. I'm the guy who got him, okay? But Anei Malka, and this would actually fit into what the king now says, Ve'amar le Daniel, Dishmei Belshazzar, whose name, remember his Babylonian name was Belshazzar, Itach kahel lahodutani lahadautani chalma dichazet ufishrei. He says, are you able to explain to me, to tell me the dream, and to explain to me its meaning? Anei Daniel, Kadam Malka Vamar. So Daniel answers before the king, and he says, Razadi Malka Sha'el. The king asked, I'm sorry, the mystery that the king asked about, Lo Chakimin Ashpin Chartumin Gazrin Yochlin Lahachavaya Lamalka. I want to be clear. None of these guys were able to explain it. Okay, who are the people? Well, Ashpin, we had these names. Chartumim, Ashpin, we had them. Gazrin we didn't have. And Gazrin, interesting, Rashi says Gazrin is a kind of a sorcerer. It's a person who consults with demons. It's another category of people. The Reb Saadia Gaon, however, says the Gazrin were actually another nation that hadn't been mentioned before. The third possibility, according to this Reb Saadia Gaon, is the Gazrin. They are the people who are gozer on behalf of the king. They're the ones who make the decrees for the king. So it's another category of things. We're really not sure how this should be read, this pasuk, because we keep on bringing in this general piece. The way the Ibn Ezra says, he says the way to read it is la chakimin, none of the wise men, such as the Ashpin, the Chartumin, and the Gazrin, Yecholin lachavaya l'malka, were able to do it. Okay. Baram, however, now Baram, even in modern Hebrew today, is a higher form. It's a more literary form of Hebrew. You'll find that I first learned the word Baram in Kahati's explanation, his commentary on the Mishnah. He uses Baram all the time. Baram means aval, but if you want to speak a higher literary Hebrew, you use the word Baram. Yeah.
Is there also something narrative, or like Baram in Crete?
That I have no idea. It could be. A lot of the same words are there. Baram, Itai, but says, it says, Daniel, Itai, there is Elakah Bishmaya, a God in the heavens, Galei Razin, who reveals the mysteries. V'hodala Malka Nebuchadnezzar Ma'di Lahave Bachrit Yomaya, who's going to tell you Nebuchadnezzar what's going to happen at the end of the days. Chelmach v'chezvei reshach al mishkavach denau. Your dream and what your visions when your head was in your bed, when your head was on the pillow, this is what it is. Yeah.
What's this concept of the end of days?
Ah,
I know it's
great.
Yeah.
Concept of end of days is very unclear. Perfect. Because it can mean a lot of things. Simple pshat, end of days means at the end of some era. We use it rabbinically, Chazal use Acharit Hayamim to talk about the period of Mashiach, the Acharit Hayamim.
That would be the end of an era, certainly.
It's the end of an era also, right? But Acharit Hayamim, what's going to happen at the end? Now, literally, Acharit Hayamim, at the end of days, is the literal translation, the end of days. Which days? Because remember, there's all sorts of possibilities. This whole dream is subject that the handout that I gave you has 5 different opinions of what the bottom line is going to be. Most of them talk about the bottom line being the end leading up to Mashiach. Rav Yoel Ben Nun has a fascinating opinion, which I just came across in preparing this year's shir. His opinion is the end of the Babylonian Empire, just the end of the empire, not the time leading up to Mashiach. Yeah.
Don't the Christians really hang their hat on this term, end of days?
Yeah. The Christians love Daniel. They love the book of Daniel. They have they also have extra. They have an extra. I forgot how many prakim of Daniel as well that they have to it. They find there's a lot of references that they use in Daniel, because of the dream and the nature of the dreams. There's a lot of different ways you can interpret the way Chazal explained the dreams, because there's an ambiguity here as well. which even allows, by the way, for all those different approaches of what exactly is being referred to.
The JC would be the end.
He is the end. Well, actually, the second coming would be the end of the days, right? But they also refer to Jesus in this as well. Now, you know what? There are pieces of Daniel also which refer to the first coming, not just the second coming. Now, all of this is, yeah, Mira.
Why is the king called Nebuchadnezzar and one person Belshazzar? Is it the same?
No, Belshazzar is Daniel.
Why is he referred
That
to-
was, well, because Belshazzar is his Babylonian name. Just like we have Yosef had an Egyptian name, Tzafnat Paneach. Just like according to some of the Meforshim, which is not the simplest, that there was this person named Moshe, which is an Egyptian name, Minamayim Mishitiu. It's a machloket. Is that really his Hebrew name? The name his mother gave him? Because remember, we have a lot of names for him. Or is it his mother's name gave him? Or is it a name that Batya gave him? It seems to be the name that the Batya gave him. Then we have machloket whether or not she knew Hebrew to give him a Hebrew name, Minamayim Mishitiu. But Minamayim Mishitiu wouldn't be Moshe. It would be probably Masud more. And so all of those pieces. There's an interesting piece that Kasuto has on Minamayim Mishitiu. Going back, there's that last phrase, Vechezvei reshach al mishkavach. What does it mean, Vechezvei reshach al mishkavach? That according to the Meforshim, what happening that Daniel is telling him, the things you were concerned about when you went to sleep are the things that were in your dreams. And that's what I'm going to interpret to you. I'm going to try to respond to your concerns. Rav Kook has a beautiful piece on dreams, on the subconscious nature of the dream. And really what Daniel is responding, according to the Meforshim here, is, this dream is not just something from nowhere. This dream is actually responding to what you had when you were thinking right before you went to sleep. Ant Malka, okay, you are the king. Rayonach al mishkavach saliku. Your thoughts, okay, as Rashi says, what you were thinking about during the course of the day, those thoughts went up. Madilahave acharei dana, regarding what's going to be happening after this. Vegale razaya hodach madilahave, and the secrets were revealed about what's going to be. Va'ana, I, says Daniel, lo bechochma di'itai bi min kol chaya. Okay, I'm going to be able to explain to you not because of any wisdom that's in me beyond any other living being. Rather, Raza Dana Galili. It's because the secret was revealed to me. Lahen, therefore, I'm sorry, I lost my place. Lahen al divrat difishra lamalka Yehodaun. I will then tell you the explanation of the dream. V'rayonei levavach, and also the thoughts of your hearts. Kinda, you will know. Okay.
What's he getting at here?
Poetically, what he's telling him is he's saying, look, it's not me. I'm not so smart, but this has been revealed to me. He's not taking the credit. Remember the same thing Yosef did the same thing. Huh?
This is a terrible.
No, but Yosef did the same thing before Paro. When Yosef went and explained the dreams to Paro, he says, Elohim, it's God who did this. So Daniel is consistently saying, this is God, this is not me. And he's saying, I'm going to answer what you've been concerned about. Ant Malka, Chazei, Havyat, Ve'alu Tzalem Chad Sagi. You, the king, okay, we saw, and there was this image that was massive, mighty. Salma Diken Rav. It was a tselem, it was an image, or it was a statue, Diken Rav. Interestingly, Rashi takes the word of ken, meaning a base. So it was a statue that was sitting on a massive base. the Barbanel disagrees. He says the Ken Rav, it was really big. V'zivei yatir, ka'em lekavlech, and it's Ziv is more than appearance. Brightness, good. Brightness was great facing you. V'ravei dechil, and it was awesome. The way it looked was just awesome. It was frightening. What was it? This is just telling him his dream. Hu Salma, the dream was like this. There was this statue, Reishei Didahavtav, that was, the head was made of fine gold. V'chadoi udraoi dichesev, and the chazeh, the chest, udraoi, Dalet and Zion interchange, so zro'o, okay, zroa, its limbs, were made of silver. Me'oi v'yarchatei dinachash, and its stomach, okay, and its loins were made of bronze. So you have gold, silver, bronze. You notice a pattern right now. Most precious, less. Shakohi, its legs, okay, the lower part of the leg, di parzel. Parzel is barzel. Okay, were made of iron. Ragloi, and its feet, minhen di farzel. Some of them were iron. Uminhen di chasaf, and some of them were made. Some was made of pottery. So gold, silver, bronze, iron, and pottery. We're going from the best to the simplest. Chazei havyat ad di hit gazeret even dilovi adain. He said, then I saw until suddenly there was this hewn stone. Not was hewn by hand. There was something miraculous. Umachat, and it hit Litzalma al Ragloi, and it hit the statue at its feet. The Farzalev Chaspa, the feet that were made out of clay and iron. Bahadaket Timon, and it smashed it. Bedain, then Daku Kechada Parzala Chaspa Nachasha Kaspa Udava. Then everything else just disintegrated. All of the iron, the pottery, the bronze, the silver, the gold, the havo, and what was left of it, ki'ur min adre kait. It was like the chaff from the adre is the grain, the threshing floor of kait. Kait is kayitz of the summer. Unasa himon rucha, and it was taken away by the wind. V'cholatar lo ishtakach lahum, and at that place you would not know where it had been. There was nothing left of it. You know, we talk about in Kaddish, b'chol atar ve'atar, in every place. Nowadays in modern Hebrew, we use the word atar as a site, S-I-T-E, like an archaeological site is an atar. Okay, so here, b'chol atar, and any kind of remnant of it, a place, lo ishtakach lo, wouldn't be able to be found. Ve'avnam de mechat letzalma, and what happened to this stone, which smashed this statue, havat letur rav umlat kolara. It became a mountain, and it filled up the land. The nachalma. This is your dream. Pretty good details. Ufishrei nemar kadamalka. Now let me tell you what it means. Ant malka. Ant, karibon. Antu melech malchai, right? Ant, ata. You are the king. Melech malchaya. You are a king of kings. What does it mean? Because Nebuchadnezzar had an empire. He was the king over many, many kings. Di elakashmaya. But you are a king who the God of the heavens, Malchuta Chisna v'Tokva v'Ikara Yavlach. The God of the heavens, though, gave you from his monarchy, he gave you strength, he gave you power, and he gave you honor. So you, king, are a big guy, but you got everything from the main king. It's an interesting thing, by the way. The Medrash Daniel points out that when we refer to, in Daniel, we refer to Elokash Shmaya. The Elokash Shmaya, the God of the heavens, is a terminology that is used by Jews who are in diaspora, in exile. It is a more removed term than using God's name. That only, and he brings proofs that when you come into Eretz Yisrael, when they came into Eretz Yisrael, they will use God's name and add on Elokai Shmaya, the God of the heavens. But it's the Yud Kei Vav Kei. Daniel is using a name that is more distanced because they are more distanced. V'chol di dairin b'nei anasha. And then he goes one more step. And in every place where people live, dairin is like the word dira, ladur, to live. Chevat bra v'ov shmaya. The animals, the wild animals, bra really means outside. The animals outside, and the birds of the heavens, Yahav bidach, we're given over to you. V'hashaltach, and your rule b'chulahon, antu reishe didahava. You are the king whose head is gold. That's you. That represents you. Uvatrach, and after you, what's going to happen? Takim malchu acharai. You're going to come, there's going to be another king after you, Achari, who's going to be Eraminach, who's going to be less than you. You're the top, you're the head, you're gold. The Malbim says the idea of the gold is also there's not just gold, but it's the head. You've got the Seichel, the Nebuchadnezzar, you put this all together. You're the brilliant one. Afterwards, the next person in line is going to be less. Umalchut lita'a. And then there will be a third king, Achari Dinachasha, who's going to be just of bronze, Ditishlat B'cholara, who's still going to rule over the whole land, the whole earth. Umalchu, and then after him will be Revi'ah. He's going to be a fourth king. Tahave Takifa Kiparzala. He's going to be powerful like iron. Kol Kival Defarzala Mahadek. And just like iron, whatever it comes in contact with, it can break or smash. The chashel kola, and it can destroy everything. Ucheparzala di mira'a kol elan tadik v'teroa, and it's going to be, and like iron can do, it can knock down everything and crush it. V'ti chaziata raglaya ve'etzba'ata minhen, and then it's going to. When you saw the legs and the fingers and the toes, chasafti pechar uminhen parzel, some of those toes were a mixture of clay and a mixture of iron. Malchu pliga tahavi. That means that there's the fourth time down is going to be a split kingdom. Umin nitzbeta di farzela lahaviva kol kaval chazite, and there's going to be the strength of barzel, of the iron, like you saw. However, kol kavad parzela ma'arev b'chasaftina. The only problem is that iron is going to be mixed together with the pottery. Now, when you mix iron and pottery, okay, it's going to be ultimately not as powerful. Ve'etzba'at raglaya minhen, and the toes of the feet are going to be from iron, uminhen chasaf, and some of it from pottery. Mintzat malchuta tahavi takifa, uminat tahavi tvira. Part of that monarchy is going to be powerful, and part of that monarchy is going to be broken. Now, we are right now, by the way, 10 o'clock. The shir is supposed to be over. And I'm going to end it right here. We're beginning to see it, but what all of this means, we're going to get to next week, and we'll get into the next one afterwards. I'm sorry I wasn't paying attention to the time. I realize it's 10. We're going to pick up next week. Just remember, gold, silver, bronze, iron, iron and clay. Iron and clay. Each are representing a different era. What those eras will be, we will discuss next week. Some of you may be here in person. Some of you may be online. Definitely those who are in Israel, welcome to being online. Those of you who are not in Israel, whenever you want to come back, we're ready to have you. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you.
Bye.
Everybody's went